Welcome to the official Marvel podcast. I am Langston Belton.
And I'm Preeti Chipper. Whether you've been a Marvel fan since Captain America picked up his shield, or you have just discovered that there's a spider ham, and fun fact, he's not edible, you are in the right place.
That's right. Consider us your all-access backstage pass, your entry to Hall H without having to wait in line. We've got all your favorite Marvel creatives on call and access to 85 years of Marvel archives.
And if not having to stand in line for Hall H wasn't enough, each week we're going to bring you exclusive interviews, character deep dives, and surprises you can only get straight from the source, the House of Ideas itself.
Yes, this is our very first episode, and we are starting with a bang.
There's no one better to help us kick off this brand new podcast than Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios and architect of the MCU.
Which is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for those of you who are not acronym inclined. So to put it in perspective, the first movie in the MCU, Marvel Studios Iron Man, came out in 2008. Oof. Let that sink in. Yeah. Time has passed and continues to do so. So Kevin really has been here since the very beginning.
Do you remember seeing Iron Man?
I do remember seeing Iron Man. I don't remember who I was with because that wasn't important. So I really don't. I really couldn't tell you who I saw it with. I didn't see it myself, but I was really excited to see my friends. But I couldn't tell you. People, my friends are going to hear this and going to be like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I don't remember if it was you. I remember being very excited. I remember staring at Robert Downey Jr.'s beard, but it was I just loved the authenticity of it, but also, of course, the suit up sequence I watch probably on a monthly basis. The first suit up sequence when he's just simply had enough of world affairs and he's gonna get involved to get the job done, which I love.
Listen, Tony Stark is he's that guy. He's a rebel.
Oh no, it was really, really good. I can't remember who I was with. It's gonna bother me.
So Kevin has been working on Marvel movies before the MCU even existed. Movies like the early 2000s X-Men franchise and the Spider-Man trilogy, Fantastic Four, The Punisher, Hulk, and so many more. I actually got to talk to Kevin, by which I mean I tried desperately to be cool and was not cool at all. But we talked all about the latest and greatest coming from Marvel Studios. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the official Marvel podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to get started.
What are your thoughts on connecting with the fans directly through this podcast?
I think it's great. I think Marvel has had I would say a tradition, but I think actually a pioneering tradition in fan feedback, going back to Stan's soapbox and to the letters in the comics. I think that back and forth is part of what made Marvel what it is. And I think that back and forth has become both easier and more difficult over the years, thanks to all the tech that we have. So I think I find that there's a lot of talking at each other. You know, Marvel talks at our fans through our work in many ways and through certain presentations. And the fans speak at other fans and at us through, incredible fan-made podcasts and YouTube pages and things like that, which are just remarkable. So I like the idea that this is going to be another outlet to have a more direct connection.
Oh my God, and there are so many exciting projects coming from Marvel Studios over the next couple of years. We've got Deadpool and Wolverine, Agatha All Along, Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Daredevil Born Again, and that is not even the full list. What excites you most about this current phase of film and TV?
Well, the corporate answer is they're all our babies, and we love them all equally. And I'm very excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, and then Agatha All Along, and Captain America Brave New World, and Thunderbolts with an asterisk, and the new Daredevil. And that's true. But if you want the real answer, if we're trying to get real on this podcast, the answer is the Fantastic Four. I'm incredibly excited for what we're doing with the Fantastic Four right now. And what Matt Shackman, our director, who did WandaVision for us, is working on. He's already moved to London, and we start filming at the end of July. Funny story, we start shooting the Monday after Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
The day after Comic-Con's first day of filming on Fantastic Four. And I'm extremely excited by it because I think those characters are are mainstays, are legendary pillars of the Marvel Universe that we've never got to play with or explore in any significant way, apart from Multiverse of Madness and a few fun teases uh, before, in the way that we're doing it in that film. So I'm extremely excited for that, and I'm also excited for the two Avengers movies, and that'll be after Fantastic Four.
So one thing that the MCU has done consistently that I really, really love is that they play with genre, whether it is throwing our favorite stories through the lens of a political thriller or a horror or even a sitcom. And we're seeing it again. The Fantastic Four cast announcement artwork, for example, was very 1960s influenced, suggesting that we might get a period film.
Yes, very much so. It is a period, and there was another piece of art we released with Johnny Storm flying in the air and making a 4 symbol, and there was a cityscape in the corner of that image, and there were a lot of smart people who noticed that cityscape didn't look exactly like the New York that we know or the New York that existed in the 60s in our world. And those are smart observations, I'll say.
Another big one, I think, for us is Deadpool and Wolverine. You know, we're coming up on the approach. It's very exciting. It's got, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman coming into the MCU. Like, what was that like? Especially to return to someone like Wolverine, who's a character from some films that, launched your career, basically. That's wild.
It was remarkable, and it was special because it was two diametrically opposed emotions at the same time, right? We had nothing to do with the first two extremely successful Deadpool movies, right? Marvel Studios had nothing to do with those. So in a way, we were playing in Ryan's turf, and we were playing in somebody else's sandbox. In the other way, they were coming into our sandbox, and what we wanted to make it unique was the blending of those styles. And when Hugh came on board, it then became, yes, very emotional on a personal level for me, because my Marvel career absolutely started 26 years ago in pre-production on the first X-Men film, and was a part of X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, and really the first 3 to a certain extent before we had the honor and privilege of becoming Marvel Studios and developing the MCU. So I'd not seen Hugh in a while, and certainly hadn't thought about Wolverine or the X-Men as something that we could do ourselves for many, many years. So it was really, really nice the way Sean Levy, our director, and Ryan was able to come in and embrace the best of what Ryan had pioneered with Deadpool and what Hugh had pioneered on those early X-Men films, and bringing them in a very irreverent way, which people are starting to piece together based on the trailers and the presence of the Time Variance Authority, into our sandbox. And it is feeling very good, and I'm anxious for the world to see it, because we're very, very proud of it and very excited about what we have in store. And the entire thing is just as gory and just as foul-mouthed and just as R-rated as you would expect, but it also is extremely endearing and emotional, and I think people are going to leave excited to turn around and go watch it again.
I was going to ask, what their introduction means for the MCU. I think the goriness and irreverence and sort of that Deadpoolness is one thing, but what do you think it means to bring these two massive characters into, a universe that is so full of our favorites?
It's so many dreams coming true at once. It's the dream of seeing Ryan and Hugh together as those characters. They've developed a friendship in real life and this very fun rivalry in social media over the last decade or more. So just seeing them together in a movie is going to be amazing. And then seeing them interact with TVA agents and people familiar with that organization from Loki season 1 and season 2 is a thrill. So the combination of all those different worlds and all those different flavors, and perhaps even more that people won't know about until they see the movie, it's a thrill.
Yeah, I think something that's so compelling about the MCU in general is what we were all I remember walking into the theater in Regal Times Square to see Iron Man in 2008 and walking out and being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, especially after the post-credit sequence. And I was like, this is going to be like reading the comics. So speaking of this sort of world that you've built now that translated so well into the MCU, how do you balance the continuing stories of established, well-loved characters while simultaneously making room for the new ones in this whole tapestry?
That's what we've been trying to do over the last 10 years or so is not just be the studio that makes one single character or one team movie, but does things like Guardians and does things like Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and brings lesser known to a broader public characters like She-Hulk or Miss Marvel or Moon Knight into public view. So we've always tried to find that balance with new characters and continuing characters. And Deadpool and Wolverine is just, I hope, is going to be an amazing example of how you can still, going 25 years on, that Hugh's been playing this character to new places and to surprise people with characters that they've seen many times before. And in cases like Logan, think they said goodbye to once in an excellent movie that we also had nothing to do with called Logan, that we are very conscious about maintaining the integrity of that movie in what we've done with Deadpool and Wolverine. But it's very exciting to see how we can continue with the same actors in new incarnations, which is great, and I think is a peek into the future as we continue to make bring these comic book stories to life.
Well, speaking of the future, we are celebrating the 85th anniversary of Marvel Comics #1 and the legacy of Marvel characters. But with that history, what keeps you inspired to go forward into the future?
I think it's the same thing. You mentioned the 85th anniversary of the comics. I think the same thing's kept the comics going, which is Marvel's the house of ideas and has always been the house of ideas. And I hope will always be the house of ideas, which is continuing to try new storylines and take the characters to new places. Sometimes they'll hit, sometimes they won't. But if you stop trying is when you atrophy and the whole thing will fall in on itself. I think it's continuing to tell new and unique stories in new and different ways. We have a show coming up that we've talked very little about called Wonder Man that I won't talk much about today either, except to say it's extremely different than anything we've done before. And it's very exciting to be a part of a company for 25 years or more, and a company that's been around for 85 years, nestled with a company, the Walt Disney Company, that's been around for 100 years, and still being able to do new things and to take characters and storylines to new places. That's what's exciting to me. And I love movies primarily, and the way you can tell stories in movies. And I like, you mentioned it earlier in this interview, the notion of different genres. I have yet to find a type of movie or a type of story that I wanted to tell or have dreamed of telling that I haven't been able to tell within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's what keeps me excited about it.
That was a wonderful answer. And I have to do a very quick thank you because Ms. Marvel, when that show came out, I think I cried like 7 times. Because I truly believe like No Normal is in the top 5 comics of ever written of all time. Yes. And so perfectly bringing that sentiment and those characters to screen. I was like, oh God, it was just like so wonderful. And there's so much opportunity there. So thank you so much for believing in it, I guess, and putting it out there.
Well, and to Sana and to the whole, and to Willow and to the whole team that created that in the books beforehand. And for many, many years, in any interview, that was the question that we were asked the most: when are you bringing Miss Marvel to the screen?
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
All right. Thank you. I look forward to listening to the next episode.
Thank you so much to Kevin Feige for joining us. I'm jealous of you, Preeti, because I don't know. I might just grab that man and shake him just to see what secrets fall out. I don't know how you didn't burst into a pile of confetti talking to that man.
Oh, did I not?
No, you made it the whole way through.
I'm like a person who is all confetti on the inside right now. So
I know you said you panicked and freaked out, but I think you You nailed it. So let that excitement flow out now as much as you like. What are you excited about the most that Kevin talked about?
I'm a sucker for a good period piece. And so knowing that the Fantastic Four is going to be a period piece, like I'm so excited to see the costumes and the style and how fun that movie is going to be. Like that is the thing, I think. Out of this interview, I was like, okay, we know things and we know this thing. We know this thing that seems tailor-made for me. What about you? What was in this interview that had you like, oh my God, I can't wait?
I mean, Fantastic Four. I mean, you're right. I mean, I just love the Fantastic Four. I like the idea of cosplaying like a different time period, but also that blue and white. I love it. It's so good. I mean, of course, Marvel Studios Deadpool and Wolverine. Very excited about. Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine is something that like I didn't think was going to happen again in my lifetime, and it's been a lifetime. Again, we remember 2008 like it was new. So, so the fact that he's coming back is pretty exciting. But the cool thing is that Wolverine it's all Wolverine returns now because it's like Wolverine is also returning in something I'm very, very excited about, incredibly excited about, and that is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection arcade classics. He's bringing the Berserker Barrage, Drill Claw. All the things he says. And for that, I got to talk to Laura Hathaway, and for over a decade, she's been the product development manager at Marvel Games. Let's talk games with Laura. I am here, of course, talking with product development manager at Marvel Games, the one, the only Laura Hathaway. Laura, how are you today?
I'm so good, Langston. How are you?
Listen, I'm doing great. Better now that we're going to talk some Marvel games because I'm a gamer, as I'm sure many of our Marvel fans are, as you are. So, Laura, first off, you do so many things at Marvel Games. How would you describe your role there at Marvel Games?
Well, our job basically is to, when a partner comes to us with an idea or a vision for a game, our job is just to support them and make sure that their vision is as authentically Marvel as possible. So we offer support in that way, and we get to work with the best of the best to make the best possible Marvel games that we can, which, you know, is pretty great.
It's not a bad way to spend the day. There are so many Marvel games from recently with Marvel Spider-Man 2. I see you rocking the shirt. Thank you for that game, by the way. I'm in my 8th playthrough. So for those looking to get into Marvel games, is there a game you would recommend for them to jump into? Is there such a thing as a jump-in point or no?
You know, it really just depends on what kind of game you like to play. So many people have different playing styles. Some people like to do something a little bit more casual. Some people like to really dive in and do something a little bit more, intensive or story-based. So you could do something like one of our mobile titles. I mean, we have Marvel Puzzle Quest, which is like a fun, casual game with a Marvel twist. You have Marvel Snap, which is great if you want to, play against people with these really great, artistic cards, and it's a little bit more strategy involved. Or you can dive into something like Marvel Spider-Man. I imagine you've heard of it.
Yes.
It's, that entire franchise of games is really great narrative-driven action-adventure games where you get to play as Peter Parker, Miles Morales. It's just a great opportunity to just feel really, really heroic as you play a really incredibly created and fun game. So I would say it really depends on what you like. And if you're, you will be able to find something likely that works with your play style of games.
Nice. Yeah. Now I want to get into, so I want to talk about some cool stuff coming up. So let's see, you talk about different genres. I'm a gamer of a certain age, so I'm a big fighting game fan. So I want to talk about the biggest announcement of the last few weeks and maybe my adult life. The new Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection arcade classics. I want to say it slower because it feels so good to say. Please, Laura Hathaway, please tell me how this dream collection came to be.
Well, we do it for folks like you, Langston. I mean, we have this rich history of making games with Capcom going all the way back to Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, X-Men versus Street Fighter, all of those really incredible titles that people remember playing back in the 90s. So we're always looking for ways to really surprise and hopefully delight our fans. So the idea of bringing these games back was always really, really exciting to us. So we're glad to finally be able to announce it to everybody.
Nice. So now, for those who don't know, these are very, very important games that have a huge nostalgia factor, right? What's that balance like, trying to create that, like you said, authentic Marvel experience?
Yeah, you want to have the thing that sort of hits you right in the nostalgia, but you also want to make sure that you are modernizing and making sure that it's still fun to play on more modern systems. You know, one thing that's actually a really cool feature that they're adding to this is a gallery and sound archive. So you can browse historical game design documents, posters, music, even like those old school instruction documents. So you have an opportunity to, again, just dive straight back into that nostalgia, you know, reading those instruction documents on your floor in front of your console.
That's great. I imagine a lot of people are going to be going for a ride. So here's the big question. What games are going to be included in this wonderful collection?
Well, the great thing about this arcade collection is we've been working with Capcom for a long time, so there's lots of different titles to choose from. So we literally are pulling in, you know, great titles from The Punisher back in 1993, all the way up through Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes from 2000. So we have a wealth of these really great titles, you know, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which of course is a classic, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, which is another classic. I mean, really, they're all bangers. So we're glad to be able to bring them all in.
Just thinking about all those games, again, like the nostalgia, the memories I have of going to arcades, sitting in my house, you know, firing up my Dreamcast. That is huge. So I'm very excited for that game. Beyond excited. My bones are shaking when I'm thinking about that. So another huge game that I'm looking forward to, I want to talk about Marvel Rivals. Can you talk a bit about what this game is? It looks fantastic. It's visually... It was like looking in at a Marvel kaleidoscope of fun images. So could you please break down Marvel Rivals for us?
Absolutely. So Marvel Rivals is a free-to-play cooperative 6 versus 6 team-based action shooter. That's a lot. So, but you basically just get to assemble a team of superheroes, supervillains, and just play with people. Like you said, the art style is incredible. It's fun. There's great opportunities to play lots of different characters. And there's a lot of interesting gameplay elements that I think players will really enjoy. In addition to battling with these superpowers, with these various superheroes, you get to be strategic and find team-up skills. And you get to traverse destructible maps from all across the Marvel universe. So it's really fun. It's a lot of opportunity for excitement, a little bit of mayhem, but ultimately a good time.
I mean, yeah, the only thing, I guess, more fun than hanging out in a Marvel location is watching get torn asunder by all the heroes and all the battles and knowing that somebody's got to clean all that up. Laura, I don't want to keep you here because I know you're off to make all of our lives a lot better. And all of our bosses very upset when we call out to play all these amazing games.
I do not claim responsibility for that, but also you're welcome.
No, nor should you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for the secrets.
It's my pleasure, Langston. Thank you.
Hey, Preeti.
Yeah, Langston.
So you remember when your friend and mine, Kevin Feige, mentioned Marvel Studios Fantastic Four?
How could I forget your friend and mine, Kevin Feige, mentioning Marvel Studios Fantastic Four?
Well, how about a refresher on the Fantastic Four team? Get all our friends out there up to speed.
Well, conveniently enough, I convinced Marvel Comics assistant editor Michelle Marchese to take a break from putting together next month's issues and join me behind the mic to help guide us through the Fantastic Four family. So some of my favorite Marvel character names come from the Fantastic Four. I mean, the team name, first of all, there are 4 of them, and they're fantastic.
The 4 of them together obviously are fantastic, but as individual heroes, they're just as formidable.
So let's talk about those formidable powers. One of their abilities you can tell just from her name, the Invisible Woman, aka Sue Storm. She can turn invisible. She can also extend that invisibility to other people or objects by bending wavelengths of light around them, and she can create invisible force fields. Plus, Sue can use that force field inside of her own mind to defend herself from telepathy, which is a very big problem in the Marvel Universe. Oh, and fun fact, as if all that wasn't enough, she has a doctorate in archaeology.
Yeah, it's funny. Back in the 60s, Sue used to worry about being this like superfluous member of the team. But over the past 60 years, she's evolved to be arguably the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, even though her husband, Reed Richards, is the one with the grandest name, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, you'll see Reed stretching and molding his body to get around any problem, but the part of him that's really fantastic and terrifying, oftentimes, is his brain. He's one of the smartest people in the universe and an expert in robotics, quantum physics, and more.
All right, now we're at our third member of the Fantastic Four, and that's going to be Sue's younger brother, Johnny Storm.
Flame on!
He's also known as the Human Torch, so you might be able to guess what he can do.
Fly.
You ruined it. You were supposed to guess turn into a human torch.
Oh, my bad.
He can set his whole body on fire. But yeah, he actually can also fly. Plus control fire and use it offensively or defensively. That brings us to the fourth and final member of the original Fantastic Four, trained pilot Ben Grimm, aka The Thing.
It's clobbering time!
Unlike the superhero names Invisible Woman or Human Torch, The Thing isn't exactly the most descriptive. Basically, he looks like this big orange guy with skin made of rocks, but he's super strong and super durable, and he's like a mountain with a heart of gold.
But of course, those strengths also have a flip side. Everyone else can turn their powers off to look like an average person, but Ben can't. And he really struggles at times with the stares and the judgments that come along with that.
Okay, so for a quick recap, Johnny and Sue are siblings. Sue is married to Reed, and then Reed brings in Ben because they were best friends in college.
And he really is a part of the family. He and Johnny in particular have a rivalry that is very much one between brothers.
And something else I love about the Fantastic Four is that their powers represent some of their best and worst characteristics. Reed stretches himself too thin, Sue sometimes feels overlooked, Johnny is such a hothead, and Ben can be stubborn as a rock.
All right, now that we know what their deal is, we have to cover how they got those powers.
Okay, so the Fantastic Four's origin story is one of the iconic Marvel tales. So back in 1961, Reed Richards was building this groundbreaking experimental spaceship for the government. However, at the last minute, they pulled his funding. But that didn't necessarily stop Reed. Luckily, his best friend was a pilot, so he recruited Ben Grimm and brought his then-girlfriend Sue Storm. And of course, her teenage brother Johnny had to tag along to help him test it out. And so they did what any one of us would do. Stole a spaceship and made an unauthorized trip to space. What could possibly go wrong?
I'm sure everything was fine and it all went normally. Okay, so to be fair, it didn't actually go super wrong. The launch was a success, except for this minor little note that while they were out in space, they flew through a storm of cosmic radiation. And if we've learned anything from Marvel Comics, it is that radiation gives you superpowers.
For legal purposes, radiation is bad for you.
Okay, but counterpoint, the Fantastic Four got powers from it, so...
Yeah, they did. And that cosmic radiation storm changed more than just those four characters. The start of the Fantastic Four basically kickstarted the whole Marvel universe. Fantastic Four #1 in 1961 put these two guys that you may have heard of, artist Jack Kirby and writer Stan Lee, on the map and launched an incredible period of storytelling. Within the next 3 years, we would see the creation of some of the most famous characters in comics history, like Spider-Man, the Hulk, and even the Avengers.
We don't call them Marvel's first family for nothing.
And like with any good Marvel team, the membership of the Fantastic Four has fluctuated over the decades. We've seen the Black Panther and Ant-Man lead various versions of the team, and heroes like Wolverine, Storm, and Spider-Man have all appeared on the roster. Actually, She-Hulk even stepped in to cover for the Thing at one point.
I mean, honestly, Spider-Man has the best Fantastic Four costume. Like, that's just true. As time has gone on, the Fantastic Four family has grown far beyond the core four, both figuratively and biologically. Sue and Reed grew their immediate Richards family, having 2 kids together. Franklin Richards and his younger sister Valeria were born, both with the kinds of complications you'd expect from a Marvel comic: threats from other dimensions, alternate futures, cosmic powers, and an appearance from the Fantastic Four supervillain arch nemesis, Dr. Doom.
Plus a nanny who's a centuries-old witch. Agatha Harkness, ever heard of her? An icon.
Truly an icon. But of course, because they're the Fantastic Four, there's no minivan to drive the kids to soccer practice. Instead, the team travels in the Fantastic Car.
Best name ever.
And one of the best superhero vehicles ever, too. The Fantastic Car has gone through a bunch of iterations over the decades, as you might expect from a superhero car. It can fly. In fact, despite the name, it is more of a plane than a car.
The original Fantastic Car looked a little bit like a bathtub, but it's evolved to be sleek, super fast, and able to split into 4 parts so the Fantastic Four can fly off in their own directions when needed.
Of course, before we wrap up, we have to give a shout out to another very important part of the Fantastic family, their home, the Baxter Building.
Yes, the Baxter Building. It's this office building in Marvel's Manhattan where the Fantastic Four have often been headquartered throughout the decades.
It was actually the first superhero headquarters to be well known to the Marvel public, which means, of course, it was a target for many, many supervillain attacks.
Safe to say, the building is iconic. If you look closely, you can spot it in a whole bunch of video games, animated series, and other renditions of Marvel's New York.
There's so much more we could tell you about the Fantastic Four, but we've had over 60 years of these characters and we would be here for actual days. If this has whet your appetite and you're hungry for more, check out the Marvel.com character pages. There are pages for the Fantastic Four as a team, as well as each of the individual members. Have fun and flame on! So we mentioned Stan Lee just a minute ago during that character study. And honestly, it is pretty hard to talk about the foundation of Marvel mythology without mentioning him. As the co-creator of many of Marvel's iconic comic book characters, including Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and the X-Men, Stan made an unprecedented impact on the world of pop culture. But he also left us with a mountain of inspirational quotes, and we'll leave you today with one of our favorites. That person who helps others simply because it should or must be done, and because it is the right thing to do, is indeed, without a doubt, a real superhero.
Words to live by. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great week, superheroes.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we will be joined by executive for Marvel Studios TV, streaming, and animation, Brad Winderbaum.
Daredevil it's similar in some ways to X-Men 97 because it's reviving something that the fans love, but it is taking it in a new direction.
In the meantime, make sure you follow the podcast and tell a friend about it.
And while you're at it, please rate and review the show. It really does help other Marvel fans find the podcast.
This episode of the official Marvel podcast was hosted by me, Langston Belton, and Preeti Chibber.
Produced by Isabel Robertson and Jasmine Estrada.
With help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Rye Dorsey.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.